Hello and welcome to another episode of the Investor Financing Podcast. And I'm your host, Beau, and we're bringing back another great guest. We're going to talk about mindset, real estate, and everything in between. Daray, I'm going to mess his name up. I never can pronounce last names correctly. So it's like Olay. Say it again for me.
Olalaye.
Olalaye. I can't pronounce it.
It's all good.
At least I already set it up like I'm not going to be able to pronounce your name, and I'm not even going to admit it. So Daray is a former Big Four accountant. He has audited some of the biggest names in real estate. After Big Four, to gain finance experience, he went to consult for a $26 billion fund manager and analyze complex investment vehicles. After an unfulfilled and overwhelming stint in corporate, Daray found cash flow real estate as a means to quit his day job and travel the world. Today, he is the founder of Before the Millions educational and coaching company, spanning its reach to over 100 plus countries worldwide. This platform's mission is to help everyday professionals become savvy investors and create lifestyle business. That is amazing. Welcome to the show. Appreciate your time. And I can't wait to get into, you finding real estate and the mindset shift you had, and then today that you're actually helping others invest in real estate. Will you kind of talk to us about the moment you realized, like, I do not like the corporate world, I need to do something different, and then like how you discovered your first real estate deal?
Absolutely, 100%. Well, Beau, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be on your show. Hopefully I can provide some value to your listeners. And the way I discovered real estate, I would say that this was in 2014, 2015. I was working at a Big Four accounting firm, and we audit the financial statements of a lot of different companies. And I was primarily on real estate clients, oil and gas clients, manufacturing clients. And I would see the numbers, I would see what they were doing, I would see what the business models were. And it was fascinating to me, but at the end of the day, my job was to add 1 + 1, make sure it equaled 2, and things of that nature. And very early on, I got very depressed. And the reason being is because in college, I was sold on a dream. And the dream was this: I didn't know what I wanted to do or be or have when I grew up. I just knew I wanted to be super successful. So I would ask people, what does it take to be successful? What are some good paths to go down? But I would never really make a decision. And my sister's the exact opposite of me, right? Like from 6, 7 years old, she always knew she wanted to be a medical doctor. She always wanted to be in the medical field, right? And lo and behold, today she's in medical school. So for me, it's always been like, I just want to be successful. I don't know what that looks like. I know it's going to have to do with business and entrepreneurship, but I don't really know when and where and how. So I got the advice from a lot of people, more specifically my high school counselor and parents and things of that nature. And I realized that since I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got in college, let me just take the safest route until I understand the world and what the world has to offer. So I thought, if I take accounting, well, then I'm useful any and everywhere at all times. Like, I can never expire. So let me do this. So I asked people, okay, well, taking accounting, how do I make the most amount of money in accounting? Well, they said, join the Big Four. And the Big Four is just the 4 biggest accounting firms in the world, right? Think of it as like the Yales, the Princetons, the Harvards of college, but in the accounting world. So if you get into one of these firms, you pretty much have your life set for you, right? It's like the cream of the crop. So I got into one of those firms. And as soon as I got there, they woo you with the Amex cards, the 4 or 5-star hotels, the constant travel, the dinners. It was overwhelming at first, but in a good way. And then lo and behold, you start to see that it's not adding up. It's not worth the 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks. And that was what I started to experience. And, they told me, hey, Daray, you work at an accounting firm for 10 years, you climbed up in the ranks, and between 10 and 15 years, you'll become what's called a partner, and you'll be making $500,000 a year. And I thought, yep, that's for me. That's appealing to me. Let's do it. But again, Beau, 1 year in, I was like, I don't know if I can go another 2 years doing this. Like, this is insane. Like, I'm on the couch Sunday afternoon watching the football. I love football, watching a football game, and I get a call saying I have to be in San Francisco or Arizona or Vegas, where you are, in the next 2 days. I would miss birthdays. I would miss weddings. I would miss anniversaries. I'd miss every single major event in my loved ones' lives because I was consistently working. And you would think that these places are amazing. Like, I love San Fran. Every time I'm in San Fran, I have a great time. except for when I was an accountant. I didn't even know I was in San Francisco. Like I was literally stuck in four walls 7 days a week, all white walls. And I say 7 days a week because I was working maybe from 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. Monday through Friday, and then 9 a.m. to maybe midnight on Saturday, and then again 10 a.m. to maybe 3 o'clock on Sunday. So we were literally working every day. And imagine the effect that has on your back, on your posture. Imagine the effect that has on your stomach, because all they do is feed you, right? They continue to feed the machine so you guys can keep working, right? So we were getting all types of great dinners. Like that was the time I experienced the most restaurants ever. I loved it, right? My restaurant vocabulary is extensive because I worked at Big Four, right? So, but it was all like, there were things behind the veil, right? They were just hiding what the suffering that we were going through. So I quickly realized when I started getting reprimanded for not so great performance, I quickly realized that not only is this job unstable because they can literally let me go at any time, but I'm not fulfilled. Right. I'm not, the companies that we were reviewing their financial statements, they were taking those statements, they were presenting those statements to their investors, and they were actually reaping the benefits of us checking and making sure those statements were valid. They were reaping the benefit, like the companies were soaring, they were skyrocketing. Meanwhile, even my company, right, the Big Four company, well, that's our client. So if they do good, we do good. But as an individual associate, there was really no upside to that. There was no fulfillment. That's the word I'm looking for. There was no fulfillment because I didn't directly see the benefit of anything. I just knew that at the end of the day, I added it up and it does equal to, right? So I realized there's so much risk, there's no fulfillment. And then worst thing for me, at least, when I got my first check, Beau, I called my mom as soon as I got my first check, and I was like, Mom, like, I don't know what's going on. I was expecting like thousands of dollars, and like, it's like literally half what I thought it was. And she was like, yes, and that's something called taxes. And I was like, but it's so much. I was like, are they going to do this every check, or is it just like a one-time thing? She was like, no, every single time they're going to take out that amount. I was like, wow, that is insane. So literally half of my money is going to the government. So I realized that when not half, and when I say half my money, like, again, guys, think about it. I'm fresh out of college, right? Most of us are fresh out of college, hopefully. Or I know, Beau, you didn't go to college.
And I'm 44, so I'm not fresh, but I look young.
Absolutely. You'd be mistaken for a young person for sure. You are definitely young, but I was fresh out of college, Beau. So I had student loans. A lot of people, they either pay rent or they pay a mortgage, right? So you pay that to your mortgagor, which is a bank. Okay, so you're paying the bank, right, in the form of student loans. You're paying the bank in the form of servicing your mortgage. You're paying the bank in the form of all your credit card, bills and statements. What else? I mean, your car note, again, that goes to the bank, right? So between the bank and the government, you're literally paying them. And again, the government is taking out 40% of your money, right? So if the government, and let's just round that up to 50. I know I'm being super facetious here, but just work with me. Round that up to 50, and I'm working from January until June 30th just to pay the government. Half of the entire year, I'm working just to pay the government. And then everything else I just named is for the second half of the year. So at the end of the year, Beau, I have $0. So I was getting frustrated. And I was just like, I don't see a way out. And I was like, these 5 to 10 to 15% pay increases every single year is not going to cut it, especially because when I get a raise, the government gets a raise. So this woman, she was about a year ahead of me. And she saw that I was frustrated, that I was disgruntled, that I was unfulfilled, that I wasn't there. Like I was just like so like depressed. I wasn't even thinking like, what could I do to get out of this? I just thought it was, it's called a hamster wheel. It's called the rat race for a reason. I didn't think that there was a way out until she handed me this book. And mind you, Beau, before the age of, I think I was 24 at the time. Before the age of 24, I hadn't read a single book in my whole adult life. Like I hadn't read a book since I graduated and they told me, hey, Daray, it's okay for you to stop reading books for school and, passing your classes. Like I didn't read books for leisure. So she handed me a book and I thought that was odd. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to read it. But for some reason, like it was because it was her that I read the book. And I started to read the book. I actually listened to the book on my way home. My commute was about an hour at the time. And I started listening to the book on my way home. And I think the very next day I finished the book. And the book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, as most of you probably assumed. And Beau, it changed my life. Like it completely changed my life. It was like, it was this Morse code or this Da Vinci code, this language that I've been trying to utter. I've been trying to speak to people, but I didn't have the words for it. I didn't understand that there was a world out there where people were actually doing the things that I read in the book. Like it was like magic. It was like witchcraft. Like I felt like I was in Hogwarts. Like it was insane. Right. And from that moment on in 2014, 2015, I've been reading books, like about a book a week since then. I'm like close to 200 books now. Like I've read all the major books. Like I'm a voracious reader, right? But that book allowed me to think differently. And 30 days from reading that book, to answer your second question, I bought my first rental property. 30 days after reading that book. And, most people, they pick up that book, they think it's magical, they think it'll change their life. And 10 years later, they're still like, man, I'm trying to get started. And I don't know how I had the foresight at the time, but I knew that if I didn't take massive immediate action at that point, that I was probably going to end up like most people. So I chalked it up in my head. I didn't think I was going to do a great deal. I chalked it up in my head as this first deal is education. I don't care what it's going to cost me. I don't care how much I'm going to fail. I don't care about any of that stuff. Most people don't have that mindset. They want to get it right. They want to get it perfect. I'm like that always, right? I'm super OCD, right? But for this particular instance, for my first deal, I just wanted to get my foot in the door. And getting my foot in the door, right? Or thinking that I wanted to get my foot in the door allowed me to do a deal, right? And again, I thought it was going to be a bad deal. Like I was just like, man, like this is just tuition money, right? Because I'm going to pick up the skills. I'm going to pick up the resources. I'm going to have the connections. All the people I used on the first deal, I'm going to use it on my second and third and 10th, because I'm in this for life. This is a lifelong commitment at this point. So I don't care how bad this first one is, as long as I get that experience and I can carry that over and I can repeat that in a better way with the second deal. That first deal ended up being a great deal just because I had that mindset to jump in, right? I bought that property 30 days after I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that's how I got my first rental, just to answer both your questions.
That's an awesome story. It's so important too. Like if you're unfulfilled, when I was listening to your story, you're unfulfilled. It's like you could have just, there's so many people that stay in their W-2 job because it pays the bills. They have a little bit extra when they're all said and done. But when you break it down and you really think about, okay, how much is going to taxes? How much is going into this? And what is actually left, right? And the more money you make, the more you pay in taxes. I mean, obviously, you could stay as a W-2 employer, as an employee, but you have to learn some additional strategies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, like can you get a short-term rental and cost segregate the property and accelerate the depreciation?
Is that the accounting in you? What's going on?
Well, I told you I wasn't. So just to give you a background on me, I was a terrible student, but once I kind of discovered entrepreneurship, I am passionate. I don't read books. I listen to them, to be honest with you, but
same here.
I have my two books right now. Obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad was a great book, but right now, Who Not How was a really newer book, which is an amazing philosophy and concept. It's simple, but it's it's a book that resonates with me. And then I'm an older book that's got they updated Never Eat Alone. Those are my two. I think his name's Kevin Ferrazzi or something like that. Those books right now. I'm listening to Kevin's book right now, and like what I've done before, I wasn't embracing the books enough. Now I'm like, okay, I'm not going to listen. I'm going to like take these lessons of these really books that I resonate with the most and like apply the strategies, right? Because you got to apply the strategies. But I love the story how you just did it. You took action, and you're like, if I'm going to learn something and it costs me a couple grand, where else are you going to get this education, right? Yeah, you can, but this is what you decided to do, and you did it, and it ended up working out well for you. And then you just kind of replicated, and you probably got more entwined in real estate, learning all the advantages. So, you now decide to do real estate. You quit your job at that point. When you bought your first one, did you quit your job yet, or no? You stayed in the job for a year or two, or how did?
Right, my job actually quit me.
Okay.
My job actually quit me. So all of my worrying, all of my panicking, all of my being terrified actually came into fruition. It just took a little bit longer of a time span. So what happened after that is right after my job let me go. I think this was in Rich Dad Poor Dad. It could have been in another book I read earlier on, but I remember one of the authors was talking about the fact that if you have a job or if you go get a job, get a job, or if you want to get education, I think it was if you want to get education in some specific field or area of expertise, or whatever the case may be, right? I paid a couple grand, tens of grands for college, right? But I realized through that book, again, this was only because of a book. It said like, hey, if you want to go get specialized knowledge, go have somebody pay you to learn that knowledge. I was like, that's a thought, right? And again, it's something that can go over our heads, or it's something that could sound so simple and frivolous. But again, if you want to go get specialized knowledge, go get paid. Like most people think, okay, if I want to go learn something, how do I afford that, right? How do I enroll in that school? How do I get accepted? But the book said, I think it was Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you want specialized knowledge, go get paid to get that specialized knowledge. So up until that point, my experience was in accounting. And accounting is all about looking at numbers in arrears, right? Looking at numbers behind you, what happened over the past, quarter, over the past year. Well, I wanted to learn how to look in the future. I wanted to learn how to forecast, right? And that deserves, or that leads you down the finance path instead of the accounting path. So I was just like, okay, well, if I want to learn more about real estate and how to look at real estate in the future, let me go find somebody who will pay me to learn this information. So after I got fired, I started looking for jobs, and I was specific about the types of jobs I was looking for. And I was able to get hired on at what you mentioned earlier, that was basically a consulting firm for a hedge fund. And the hedge fund, all they did was buy real estate assets, right? Mostly B and C class apartment buildings, but a lot of storage spaces, even malls, right? Large strip centers, all types of things. And I'm literally making investor reports. I'm literally creating what the investors are going to look at to decide whether or not their decision to invest is going well. Like these are not like small time investors. These are pension funds, right? Like the New York City pension fund, right? These are like, actual conglomerates of businesses. So I was able to look on a large scale at what was going on. And through that time, again, I just wanted the knowledge. I went to get a second job because I wanted the knowledge, one, but two, I needed to still get paid until I built up my passive income. So I started buying more rentals. And one of my strategies earlier on was to house hack. So there came a point in time where I was living in Dallas, and I house hacked a fourplex, right? It was a $500,000 fourplex. And I remember that I was collecting, at the time, I think we were collecting $4,300 in rent, or $4,800 in rent at the time, total, in 3 units, right? I lived in 1 unit and I was collecting rent in the other 3 units. So I was collecting $4,800 in rent, and my overhead was $3,000. So again, guys, this blew my mind. Like it changed my entire living situation, because before that deal, right, I would have to pay to live where I am, right? Wherever I'm renting, I would have to pay, let's just say it's $1,500, right? And if I wanted to travel, right, I told you I'm going to Africa for a month and a half. If I wanted to travel, I'd also have to pay for my stay where I'm traveling. So no matter what, you still got to pay your rent. You still got to pay your mortgage at home. It doesn't matter where you go and how long you go for. Like you might want to not go for too long, because again, it's like double taxation. So, and I think that's one of the things that prevents most people from long life travel, because again, it's like you're living in 2 places. The minute I bought that fourplex and I started house hacking, and I was making $4,800 a month, my overhead was $3,000. So one, I'm no longer paying $1,500 a month in rent. Okay. So that's something that most people, that's like sunk costs that most people don't think about. I'm no longer paying $1,500 in rent. So that's going into my piggy bank. But two, I'm getting paid in excess of $1,800 to live for free. So I'm getting paid to live for free. And the minute I started getting paid to live for free, it didn't matter where I traveled and how long I was gone for, because I didn't have a bill at home to come back to. I was in fact getting paid to be gone. I can use that excess for my stay over there. And that's when I was able to really, because my passion is travel, by the way. I hope you guys can tell my passion is travel. I love traveling, right? And that was where I was able to break the shackles and really do what I wanted. And at the same time, I had this full-time job. So my whole plan with the full-time job was to be an employee for 2 years and quit my job. Okay. So at that point, I wanted to be an employee for 2 years. I wanted to quit my job. So I started building up my rental portfolio. And the issue with building my portfolio at the time is that for every deal I wanted to buy, because I was going the traditional route, for every deal I wanted to buy, I needed to have 20 to 25 to 30 grand for that deal to put down for every single deal. So if I want to get to 5K a month, right, I need to have 19 more or 20 more or 25 more, right? $25,000 down payments. If I want to get to 10K a month, I needed to have 39 or 40, $25,000 down payments. And I was just like, this is impossible. Where am I going to get this money from? This is crazy. I don't know if I'm ever going to quit. But again, I had a goal to quit my job in 2 years. And I quickly want to say that the reason my goal was 2 years, right? Most people, you talk to most people, and, which is something I did. I always ask a lot of questions, and I was like, how long do you think it'll take for me to quit my job? And depending on who I was talking to, if I was talking to coworkers, they say, yeah, I heard it takes like 10, 12, 15 years for you to actually, build up that amount of passive income to quit your job. And I was like, okay. So that sounds doable. It's a little bit too long for me, but okay. And then when I started talking to more people who are like-minded entrepreneurs who are getting started, it's like, man, I'm trying to do it in 5, 6, 7 years. Like, the time shrunk by half. And then when I talked to people who are actually doing it, right, who actually had done it before, it took them 3, 4 years. So I was like, the people who actually did it have a much shorter time frame than the people who have no idea what's going on. So how about I take their advice, and how about I use what's called Parkinson's law? And Parkinson's law is basically the time you allot to something, whatever task that is, you will naturally fill up all of that time that you allot to whatever task you give. So if you're like, all right, I'm going to, my homework is due on Friday, right? You may not do your homework until Thursday at midnight, but you're going to get it done, right? Because again, that's the given time frame, right? So I applied Parkinson's law to that goal of 2 years to quit my job. I started building up my rental portfolio, and we'll talk about the problems that I had with building my portfolio, but ultimately I hit another snag and my job fired me again.
But it was meant to be though, right?
It was meant to be. Absolutely. At this point, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to grow my portfolio by 20 and 25 and $30,000 down payments. It just wasn't happening. So I started looking for other avenues. I started 8 businesses in 2016. Okay. I was desperate, Beau. I was hungry. I don't know if you've ever been in that position where I was like, I need to get out of this corporate America by hell or hot water. I need to go. I need to leave. I need to live my life. Right. So I was like, if anything works, like, well, I started these were all online businesses, right? This was the craze in 2015, 2016. I mean, a lot of it still is, right? Started a drop shipping store. I started becoming an affiliate. I started a Kindle publishing company. I started a lead gen company. I did everything. And all I was doing was I was just looking at each business, and I was like, all right, whichever one shows the most promise, that's the one I'm going to dedicate my time to. So I did that for about a year and a half while I'm buying my rentals. And I realized, because I never had a business before, I realized that, these businesses don't run on their own. They don't operate by themselves. They need capital. They need marketing dollars, right? Like nobody's just going to come. It's like, we build it and they will come. That's not real, right? And I was like, man, like it's really hard to fund all of these businesses and my real estate deals. And honestly, nothing is working. But I'm working tirelessly. I have a full-time job and I'm running these businesses. And I'm just like, I need something to stick. I have a 2-year goal. I need something to stick. Now, if I had a 5-year goal or a 10-year goal, would I be that pressed? Probably not. Right. But I had a 2-year goal. So I was looking at any and every option. At the end of that year, I was flat broke. No more money for deals. No more money to put in the marketing of any of those businesses. And I was just like, well, there it goes. And up until that point, Beau, it's not that I didn't believe in mentorship. I was totally opposed to it. I was one of those like, do not give your money to a mentor. Do not waste time with a guru. Do not, like, YouTube University all the way. Like, you can teach yourself any and everything. Like, you have the power to do that. Read these books. I started, I was already a voracious reader at that time. So I was just like, every answer is in a book. But for some reason, I just couldn't get over the hump. And by the end of that year, I had gotten beaten down so much that I started reconsidering my beliefs around mentorship and getting help. And I hired my first mentor. At the top of the next year, I hired my first mentor. And he's an apartment syndicator. His name is Joe Fearless. Many of you may know him, but he's an apartment syndicator. And that was my very first mentor. And the reason I went to hire this mentor was, one, I was stuck. I had no more money. And 2, the strategy that he was using was a way to buy property with none of your own money. So that's all I was looking for. How do I get more deals, right? I don't have enough passive income to quit my job. You want to say something right there? It looked like you want to say something.
No. I'm just,
Okay.
I love the story. This is an amazing journey because it's just, you're being very honest. Like, and I love the story how you like, cause you were such a go-getter that you're like started 8 businesses and you're just going at it. And then like, you kind of like at this point in the story, you're not saying desperate, but you're so disappointed. You're probably like, I'm going to have to go back to the big 4. I'm going to have to do this. And then, then you say, I need a mentor because there's got to be a better way. And it was kind of like probably your last, like, if this didn't work, you're like, all right, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
And so you got into syndication.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
you realize the power of other people's money and helping people get returns. And then that opened the door. So
right.
Why don't you kind of take off from there? This is a really good story. So we got to keep this going.
You're listening to the Investor Financing Podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, this is Beau Eckstein, host of the Investor Financing Podcast. I appreciate you checking out our channel. On this podcast, we talk about real estate, investing, financing, business lending, and acquiring and expanding your business. I'm sure you will find some videos here that will help you build your business empire. There's a lot to see. Take your time and make sure you comment, like, and subscribe. Thanks again.
Awesome. Absolutely. So, I got into the syndication model because of everything that you just named, but also because of my professional background. So it's something I teach people today. Like, there's 1,000,001 different strategies in real estate. Like, I mean, there's land developing, there's, note buying, there's the traditional way, there's house hacking. I named that earlier, self-storage, multifamily. There's so many different things that you can buy. And people are like, their eyes gloss over because there's like all these vehicles, there's wholesaling, there's fix and flips, there's so much. What do I do? Right. And it's been a challenge for a lot of people. And it was a challenge for me. And I went through a lot of different iterations of what I thought my strategy was until I landed on my strategy. So one thing I help people do now is realize that your strategy and your way to success doesn't have to be the next guy's strategy. Because at the end of the day, every single one of those vehicles that I named, there are tens of thousands of millionaires that have made millions from those vehicles. So if you just focus on the money, you're never going to be able to choose because they all make money. Honestly, that every single one of those strategies, that they make money, whether it's a little bit harder or not as hard as the last one, they all make money. So let's take the money out of the equation and let's focus on ourselves, what we want, our lifestyle. Let's focus on our deadlines, right? With my deadline of 2 years, how do I get all of these $30,000 down payments in the next 2 years? It's impossible. Right? What's your deadline? And then let's focus on our skills. When you focus on all the things that surround you as an individual, right? My skills at the time, I had the accounting background and I was in the finance world. So I was getting the finance expertise as well. My skills at the time aligned perfectly with the syndications. Perfectly. I mean, that's exactly what I was doing at work every single day for these funds. So ultimately, I was like, let me just jump into syndications because of my skill set, because of where I am, and because of my goals. What ended up happening, I remember Joe brought me a deal. It was a 300 unit apartment complex. I think we're buying it for $30 million or $40 million, one of the two. And my job was to raise, at the time, let's just say my job was to raise $500,000. Right. And I wanted to raise $1 million. Joe was like, hey, this is our new deal. This is my first deal raising money. And I wanted to raise $1 million because I was this excited young budding entrepreneur. And I thought I can do it. I was like, I can raise $1 million. Just let me do it. He's like, no, Daray, just start with $500,000 and we'll get there. So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna knock this out the park. Yeah, didn't happen. Did not happen whatsoever, bro. I think that, I started corralling this list. I started doing all the things he and others told me to do. I started reaching out to people. And every time I got on the phone with somebody, every time I went out to lunch with somebody, I just had this pit in my stomach, right? It was weird. I was nervous. It felt like I was asking or I was begging or I was like, hey, I need your money, or, this is all the reasons why it's a good deal. Hey, give me, put your money here. And it felt like I was, again, I didn't feel it in a worthy or an advantageous position. I just felt weird. And at the end of the day, I started thinking about the future when I was managing all these people's money, and I would get these calls, let's just say COVID happened, and I would get these calls from my investors that frantic, and I have to worry about dealing with all that stuff. And a lot of these thoughts overwhelmed me. And through that process for that particular deal, I ended up raising, Beau, guess how much? $0. I ended up raising $0 for this deal. I was so embarrassed. I was so like distraught. I was just like, how could this happen? And also I realized, one, the way I was working with investors was not the way I should be working with investors, right? I was reading a lot of books back then. I read a book by Oren Klaff. By Oren Klaff. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a famous negotiator. I read a book by him, and he has the, teeth to the pavement, the grind mentality of like, hey, take it or leave it, type of negotiating tactics. But that didn't match up well with my personality, right? But that was who I was studying those things from. So ultimately, again, through this stint, I realized, hey, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. I'd rather be the passive investor that gives $50,000 to Joe. I don't want to be the syndicator that's raising money. This is not something I see myself doing for the rest of my life. I realized that quickly, right? So through this process, again, I'm going from one iteration to another. I start with the traditional way of single family homes, right? And then I jump into the apartment syndications. And I was like, okay, well, this is not working for me, nor is this working for my timeline. So I get into the natural thing that most people get into first, which is wholesaling. So I just completely take a step back. I'm like, well, wholesaling provides me with the upfront cash I need to get my other businesses running, right? And it'll give me enough cash and experience so that some of the deals I actually keep. So I had a whole plan around what I was going to do in wholesaling. As I started to wholesale, I would do deals. There would be few and far between. And I would talk to sellers, Beau, and I would get a seller on the phone, and a lot of sellers, they'd be motivated, which is what I look for, motivated sellers. And a lot of sellers would be motivated. And maybe 1 out of every 10 sellers that was motivated, my wholesale model would fit what they needed to do, right? So I'd be able to wholesale their deal. Well, the other 9 sellers, they were motivated. They needed to sell their property by any means necessary. But my wholesale criteria, because oftentimes we're offering, right? We're offering a deep discount on their property, right? So if a property is worth $100,000, we may offer $40,000, right? So for some people, that just didn't work. Even if they wanted to take the deal, let's say their loan was $80,000, right? They couldn't take a $40,000 deal because they have to pay off their loan, right? So some people, it didn't work, but those people weren't less motivated than the people who my wholesale deals did work for. So ultimately, I was letting a lot of deals slip through the cracks because I didn't know anything else. I didn't have any other strategies.
Subject to or lease option.
Absolutely. So that's what happened. That's what happened. I needed to instead of, and this is, I often equate it to like a shoe salesman who sells the brand new Air Force, the all white Air Forces, right? And all he has are, all these stocks are size 9s. And he goes on the street like the ice cream truck, and he just, hey, I got these new Air Forces. I got the size, I got these new Air Forces. Who wants them? And people come up like, yeah, I want your Air Forces. I want this. Yeah, I'm super excited. I want it. Can you get me a pair? I want a fresh new pair, whatever the case may be. And he says, yeah, I got you. Here's a pair. And they're like, well, you didn't even ask me my size. And I'm like, it's okay. This is a size 9. It's going to fit you. And I'm like, no, like I wear a size 13. How is that ever going to fit me? And you're like, dude, it doesn't matter. Trust me. This size 9 is going to be perfect for you. Right. So the seller and the buyer, the seller's out of integrity with the buyer because the seller just wants to get a sale. And the buyer does want to buy the Air Forces, but it's not a good fit. So if that seller wanted to serve the customer, right, they would stock all the shoe sizes. And instead of selling like all the reasons why the size 9 is a perfect fit, I don't have to sell anything. I can sit back and listen to the customer's wants, needs, and desires, and I can serve them because I have all the sizes in stock. I have all the colors in stock. So that's what I started doing in my real estate journey. Instead of just wholesaling, I started pocketing these different tools so that now when I approach a seller, I'm like, hey, here's my wholesale offer, take it or leave it. I say, hey, what's going on? How can I help? Totally different mentality, right? So all those sellers that I wasn't able to help before, because I learned the strategies that you just named, right? And I call it creative financing. That's like the overall bubble of it. But because I learned subject to lease options and owner financing, I was able to do a lot more deals, right? Because I had other shoe sizes in stock. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And that's good. I mean, we talk about that. Like you if you're an investor and you might have no money, or maybe you have money, but you don't have deal flow, or you need to have all these tools in your tool belt. You need to learn these strategies. And I just never, your story was like, I thought you were going to like say, okay, syndication was my cup of tea, but really what I like about the story so far is you had to go through a lot to end up where you're at today. And you could easily give it up. You didn't give up. And then you realized that you were trying to force a shoe on somebody and it wasn't the right size. And then you realize that I could deliver the same shoe, but offer different options for the shoe, essentially, right? Like there's always a solution. And so it's not a hard sell because you don't like the hard to sell. You like the consultative approach, which is what you're doing. Somebody's got a problem. How can we give a solution where it's a win-win for you, it's a win-win for the buyer, and it's win for me, who's I call it a deal architect. You're a deal architect, right?
I like it.
And so then kind of fast forward to where we're at today. Like your model now is really finding a motivated seller through creative deal finding strategies, and then figuring out a way to help them and help an end buyer.
Absolutely. 100%.
Whether it's a flipper end buyer, or it's a buy and hold, or it's an actual owner occupied deal. You have solutions for all these people.
Yep. 100%. Yep. And oftentimes I'm the end buyer because I like to owner finance and subject to, but yes, maybe even upwards of 30-40% of the time, I like to sell to what's called a tenant buyer as well, which can be an end buyer. So, and what I've actually been doing lately, I have quite a few of these now, but I've actually been selling to buyers. And let me explain what I mean by that. I bought a property subject to, and this is called, and you guys will see it. It's called a sandwich, but I bought a property subject to, and the mortgage on that property was $160. Okay. And the seller of that property needed to sell that property quick, right? She was going into foreclosure ASAP because she just happened to come about this property. She's not an investor. She's a school teacher. She has nothing to do with real estate. She doesn't even know anything about the property, really. She lives in a small, quaint apartment with her small child. And ultimately, when she came about this property, I don't know if it got passed down from her parents, or she just begot this property somehow, and she didn't need it. She didn't want it. It was causing her stress. In fact, the tenants that were supposed to be paying like $1,200 a month in rent, they were paying like $500 a month. Some months they were paying $25 some months, right? This is like at the height of the pandemic. So a lot of tenants wanted to take advantage of landlords. So she was just like, I'm about to go into foreclosure. I don't know when this moratorium is being lifted. I don't know what's going on. I need to get out fast. So she tried to sell the property on the market with the realtor. Now the property, and I don't want to throw too many numbers on a podcast, but the property needs, let's just call it $10,000 worth of work to be worth around $200,000. Okay. So her loan is $160. The property needs about $10,000 worth to be worth $190, $200. She finds a buyer, or her realtor finds a buyer. They get to closing, and the title company tells the seller that, hey, do you have your $5,000 check to sell this property? The seller's like, what do you mean? And the title company is like, yeah, your loan is worth this amount. You have X amount of closing costs, right? And you still have to pay your realtor the realtor commission. So at the end of the day, you have to pay to sell your property. And she was like, whoa, because she wasn't able to sell it at $190. She wasn't able to sell it at $200 because it needed $10K worth of work, right? So nobody was going to buy it at those prices. They were going to buy it at $170. Well, her loan is $160. There are many, many sellers who are over leveraged just like her, right? So in her situation, no realtor wants to work with her because there's no room for their commission. No investor, no wholesaler wants to work with her because they got to get the property for, $140, $130, $120, right? No investor, no realtor, nobody's going to work with her. What does she do? These were the types of sellers I was running to all the time before. And I just didn't know. I didn't have any tools. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help them. When I started learning creative financing, these types of problems became my bread and butter, right? This is what I was excited about because she has no help. I'm doing my civic duty and I know how to help her. I know how to alleviate her stress and make a killing by alleviating her stress, right? Our properties are normally worth $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. This property is worth sub $200,000, and I still made a killing on the deal. So here's what we did: we brought the property for what she owed. Okay, she owed 160. We bought the property for 160. So instead of her selling on the market at 170, 175 and having to pay 5,000, I was like, ma'am, you don't have to pay me anything. I'm going to buy the property for what you owe, but here's what you're going to do. Right? Instead of me buying it the traditional way, going to find a loan and replacing your loan, keep your loan in place and I'm going to start paying on your loan. She said, okay, Daray, no problem. I said, cool. So we ended up, and this is just because my attorney made me, but we ended up paying $100 of consideration to buy the property. So at the end of the day, I bought the property for $100, right? But it was really free. It was really just a conversation, right? So I bought a property that could be worth $200,000. I bought it for $0. I bought it for quotation marks $100 plus closing costs. So here's what we did with the property. Now that I own this property, right? She owns the deed of trust, but I own the deed because I'm now the property owner. So now that I own this property, I am going to sell this property to a buyer. Okay. Traditional way to sell the property to a buyer is that buyer brings financing, right? And that financing is what extinguishes her financing. Again, my sales tactic is not the traditional way, right? I'm helping buyers who don't qualify for traditional financing, right? 80% of buyers today do not qualify. If they went to a mortgage company or a bank today and tried to get financing, there'd be one or two or three things that they'd have to fix. Some people, there's a lot of things that they have to fix. They need a lot of time, right? But most people don't qualify for traditional financing today without fixing those little minor errors, whatever they may be. And this is not to say these are bad people. These are people that really don't qualify. Oftentimes, these are high wage earners, right? These are lawyers, doctors, engineers. These are entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs who don't have a W-2 pay stub, right? People who haven't been at their job for more than a year, right? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people don't qualify. These are upstanding citizens. So if I can get one of these upstanding citizens to buy this property from me, but instead of going the traditional way where they're not able to get financing, I want to solve their problem too. I want to be their bank. I want to finance them. So what I did is I created a note on top of her note. Okay. So we advertised the property at $225. Okay. Why am I able to advertise a property at $225 that's worth $200,000? Well, again, finance. Exactly. Seller finance to people who don't qualify for traditional financing. Just like if you buy a car off the lot, right? If you have all cash, you're going to pay a lot less than if you need financing to buy the car. So these individuals know, hey, I'm going to pay a premium to buy this property from Daray because he's doing me a favor. Right. He's allowing me to live in this property. He's allowing me to buy this property. Whereas otherwise I'd have to rent for the next year, save up, fix all my stuff, and then move in. I want to be a homeowner today. So I'm like, hey, I'll finance you. So we advertised it at $225. I did about $500 in cleanup work. Don't forget, the property still needs $10K in repairs. I did about $500 in cleanup work. So I'm all in closing costs plus $100 to the seller plus $500. Right. So at the end of the day, we and this is the type of buyers that we look for. We find a buyer that says, hey, I'll buy the property, but that $10,000, are y'all going to fix the property before I buy it? Or can y'all take off $10K and I'll just fix it myself? That was the plan in the first place. So the buyer was like, okay, I'll buy the property, but take off $10K. So now I'm going to buy the property for $215. Okay. So the buyer buys the property for $215 so that he can do the work himself. So again, I bought a property for $100. I've now sold it for $215, and I've only put $100 in the property. I only put $500 for cleaning, right? I'm literally not spending any money on this deal. His down payment is $30,000. Okay, my down payment was $100 to the original seller. His down payment is $30,000, and I get that up front. Okay, so I've just made my first payment center. There are more payment centers because unlike a traditional sale, right? Once I sell the property, I'm not done. Traditional sale. Once I sell the property, I'm done with the deal, right? But in this sale, I'm the bank. So he's made his down payment and now he's making monthly payments to me as the bank, right? So 215 minus 30 is 185. So the note that I have with him is 185. The note that I have with the seller is 160. Okay. Now, how much I pay the seller's note on the seller's note is about $1,200 a month. How much he pays us is about $1,900 a month. Okay. So do the math, right? There's $700 a month that I'm making every single month. And I am not his landlord. He owns the property. I don't get the 2 a.m. calls. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to fix a single thing on he literally owns the property. He has the deed. I'm just another bank. I'm just Chase. I'm just Wells Fargo, right? Chase doesn't come in and fix your property when you need it fixed. You fix it yourself when you own property, right? So as the bank, I'm just a note holder, right? He just pays me every single month. So again, and then when we cash out at the end, we'll make another 15, 20, 30 grand. So ultimately, this is a deal that's going to make upwards of 60, 70 grand. And I put $100 in it.
And if he never pays it off, it doesn't matter because you're paying down principal balance. Your $700 or whatever per month cash flow is going to end up being what, depending on how many payments you have left on the senior debt from the lady that you bought the property from. You know, you might only have 5 years of payments left, or whatever what that number is, or maybe it's 10 or 15 years. But at some point, then you're making $1,900 a month with $100 out of pocket. Well, $500 for cleaning. Plus you got 25 grand or whatever that is up front. So this, my friends that are listening, is what we're going to call, it's called a sub two.
We call it a wrap.
Sub two wrap. It's a sub two wrap. He bought a sub two and he wrapped the existing mortgage. He's making the spread there. It's got at least three profit centers, right? He's getting his spread on the monthly down payment, spread on the payment, and exit when he sells, the difference between the two different notes. So that is what I call a phenomenal deal. And it sounds like you finally found that strategy where you could reach your 2-year goal, because you don't need that $25,000 payment. Like, I'm buying a duplex right now. What am I doing? I'm putting 30 grand down to buy this $100,000 duplex. I don't have that many $30,000 down payments. You're going to run out of money unless you get private money, but it's still paying the buddy to go raise the money and this kind of thing. So, and what I love about this whole conversation is, guys, what kind of market do you think we're going to go into pretty soon here? I don't know when, but are we at a peaking market where people have overpaid drastically on these overbids? Of course. This is the time to level up and learn these strategies, because Amen. this is going to be the market to be doing this, because you're going to get somebody that's like, hey, I need to relocate, but I owe 200 and my house is only worth 180, right? And there's all these cases that are going to come up. And being a problem solver, it's not like advantageous negotiation, like where you guys are, belly to belly and arguing about the price. It's really, this is how we can solve your problem. Mm-hmm. Do you want to solve your problem, or do you want to short sell? You decide. Or you want to come out of pocket $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 and take your savings. I mean, this is like the ultimate strategy. And since I've always been on the financing side, I've always been able to like do it my way and do 100% financing in my way. But like, I always, I love these creative deal structures, because it's like, it's really the ultimate way to become financially independent with very little to no money. And really, it's just about finding these opportunities, and they're all over the place. You just got to learn how to find them. So that's like an amazing, like, kind of journey of how you went from this accountant to this financially independent person, where now you can go to Africa for a month and a half, and you can still handle your business in Africa on vacation from your comfort of your phone and your laptop.
100%.
So why don't we talk about beforethemillions.com and like how you help people that want to do what you're doing?
Absolutely. Well, it's crazy, because if we go back in my story and we talk about my first mentor, and, I'm paying them like 10, 15 grand. And again, this was like at the end of 2016, I had no money. And I remember he was just like, dude, like you're struggling bad. And the thing about this is, this is a crossroads. And I still remember that sales call, man, because I do a lot of sales calls now, but his, I still remember his. And he was like, dude, like he asked me one question that sold me when I had no money. He was like, do you believe that what we're going to do together is going to make you a millionaire? Do you believe that you are going to reap the benefits? Because if you actually believe it, right? If you believe that in the next year, you'll make $100,000, in the next 2 years, you'll make $300,000. If you actually believe that you're going to be able to do that, what's 10 grand today? But if you don't believe it, again, think about it. If you actually, if like you hope for it, but you really don't believe it, then you're just like, dude, like, I don't know, man. Should I do this? Like, this is scary. Like, this is not even savings anymore. I'm broke. This is on credit. Like, this is going to put me in the hole. This is an expense. Right. But when I believed, and it's more than believing, it's saying that I'm going to make it work at all costs. I'm going to get the value out of this at all costs. Right. And when I paid him that money, crazy thing is our first meeting, I'm excited. I'm like, all right, going to learn how to do syndications. It's going to be so fun. I can't wait to, get to the next level. We get on our first call, and the first thing he tells me to do, Bo, I was so mad. First thing he tells me to do is he's like, first thing I want you to do is don't worry about, numbers and cap rates and all that stuff. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to build a platform. I was like, Joe, what? It's like, I just paid you 10, 15 grand. You want me to do what? It's like, yeah, I want you to build a platform, like some kind of social hub, congregation, whatever you want it to be. So I was like, okay, whatever. I thought about building a Bigger Pockets type, website. I thought about a YouTube channel. I didn't want to be on video. I thought about what else could I do? I didn't want to do a podcast for sure, because he does a podcast. I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. So I thought about all these different things. It took me a few weeks, and I was like, all right, you know what? I think a podcast is probably where it's at. I think it's the easiest. It's the most reliable, most go-to. And I listen to a lot of podcasts. So why not? So I ended up doing a podcast. And at the time, again, I was so frustrated that I had to go through this process of building my podcast and the website and all this stuff, because I just wanted to buy real estate. But lo and behold, it was that vehicle that he made me build before we ever even got into real estate that has made my company today. Like that was literally the inception of the company, right? It started off as a podcast, and I went from the listeners just emailing in or sending me a message on social media, asking a few questions here or there, to, hey, like, can you show me what you're doing? Can you help me? And I was just like, this actually has legs. Like, I'm actually building a community. This is really cool. And, you talk about Before the Millions, and it all started because I wanted to get the best and brightest minds to tell us their secrets. That's all I wanted. I wanted to know how everybody else is doing it. Right. So the Before the Millions podcast is literally a podcast about a millionaire story who's made millions in real estate and how they made their millions in real estate step by step. And then we have a segment right after that teaches you the structure of what they're actually doing. So we're literally giving you guys the tea, right? So that's how the podcast was really formed, was because I was forced to create it, but it ended up turning into a educational platform. And we have hundreds of thousands of listeners. And it's something that ultimately it's my most prized possession, right? Everything that I do, it's my most prized possession. It gives me the most joy, right? That's why I love being on podcasts like yours. Like, I get so much fun and fulfillment just talking to new people that are where I was 5-6 years ago, right? And it's just like, dude, there is a way. Here are a few ways. And again, not every path is for every individual. You want to figure out your particular situation and what's most beneficial for you. And that's what we help people do.
I love it. I mean, this was an amazing show today. And it's one show that I actually didn't talk that much because I was actually listening and enjoying it. I'm like, yeah, this is a great story. This is like the story that I think everybody needs to hear, because it didn't come easy by any means. And, he could have easily quit and just went back to the corporate world. But I'll tell you what, he'd be living an unfulfilled life right now, and he'd be pissed off at the world. And now he's like helping and sharing and growing and expanding his network. Right now, he has, like what you just shared with people that aren't used to any kind of creative finance, just open their eyes to a whole new world, because there's ways of buying property with no money, people. There really is. I've bought property with no money. I mean, it's all about deal structuring. Look at the opportunities, find your strengths. So, I mean, this was just an amazing podcast. I'd love to have you on another show where we do a PowerPoint share. We do like a PowerPoint walkthrough of deal structuring, because I think you have a beautiful way of explaining things, very clear, very articulate. And anyway, just appreciate the show with you. Any place you'd like for people to follow you that you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. If they want to check out the website, beforethemillions.com, again, it's a podcast, and we interview highly successful individuals like yourself, Bo. So we got to get you on beforethemillions.com. And if you guys want to connect with me on social media, my platform of choice is Instagram, and it's just my first and last name, Daray Olalaye. Or you can just go to beforethemillions.com/Instagram. And I think that'll take you directly to my IG page.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Put some comments below and like this video, and we'll see you on the next episode.